Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, in the world of tone. We are back with two of the most distinguished gentlemen in the world of tone, the great Brian Omilion and Grant Klassen. We're glad to have them back.
Hello.
After doing my monologues for the last few weeks, I'm glad to be relieved from some of my fellow members in the world of tone. Today, we are going to backtrack a little bit on some kind of current events that were, I think, remarkable and noteworthy in our industry that we didn't get a chance to comment on, but I think are interesting points to rehash, given that there aren't a lot of examples of the thing that we're about to talk about amongst manufacturers, and that is the distinguished gentleman, Josh Scott from the great state of, I guess it's Missouri, right? It's not Kansas.
Yeah.
Of Missouri. Is it Kansas or is it Missouri?
Would you say he's not in Kansas anymore?
I don't know. I forget if Overland Park is Missouri or Kansas. I think it's Missouri.
I'm the Canadian, so I'm going to confidently say Missouri, having no clue. No sweet clue over here.
This is...
I'm pretty sure he's in Kansas.
KC.
Let's see. This is a bad... Yeah, you know what? I think you're right. I think you're right. It's
Can
Kansas.
this be 1 point for the Canadian as far as American geography?
It's Kansas. You're right.
Hey, all right. I'm done for the day. I'll see you guys later.
Yep, you're done. You're done. Your geography skills are unmatched, Grant.
Or my guessing skills. We won't say which one.
In any case, he has done a really interesting thing that I think is unique in that two things I think that he's done as of late that are unique among many is firstly, he gave some really interesting insight as to why they're going to discontinue Ross pedals.
Yeah.
And ordinarily, when a company dissolves, I think it kind of just they disappear quietly and they die a slow death sort of in isolation and nobody really knows the reasons or the details. And I thought one thing that was very interesting and refreshing was the candidness of his response as to why, and then using that as a springboard to sort of clear out their remaining inventory. And so sort of buying back their inventory from their dealers and then selling them in sort of a flash sale, at midnight. And I think that my understanding is they sold them out in, under an hour or something like that. And they had, hundreds or maybe thousands. I don't remember the number that he quoted of these in stock, and I think they were selling them for something super reasonable, like $79.99 or something like that. And just to really quickly rehash it for people that have no idea, Josh in essence kind of talked about what the struggles were to relaunch the brand. He kind of talked about all the things that went into relaunching the brand, and kind of mentioned that it was, I don't remember what number in the number of relaunches that have occurred of Ross over time.
I think it was 5.
Yeah.
I think this was the 5th iteration.
Okay. Jeez. So obviously multiple times, and he said that this has been the most successful relaunch of those 5. But kind of explained why it didn't work and some of the challenges that they experienced. And I thought it was really interesting to see a business owner in our industry be vulnerable like that, and certainly he has the respect of many people within the industry, and then just fans of pedals generally. To hear that, I hoped that what it did was it opened people's eyes up to what these cost. And I think that there was some other downstream consequences of him kind of being this candidate, and I think we'll get into that a little bit as well. But I'm just curious from your perspectives as manufacturers and rig builders, what was your feeling on this? And do you agree with it being sort of a refreshing take, and any sort of reactions that you'd like to share with us and the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, You want to go?
Brian,
Okay.
I feel like this is you.
All right. That's great. Yeah, no, I thought it was really cool. I think a big thing with pretty much anything is just like transparency when it comes to a lot of like details, because, people are like, oh, they all have their guesses on how much things cost and whatnot, and they don't really get to think about all the like stuff that goes into, a pedal. I mean, from you guys, you guys know. And just like him being really honest about what it costs. And, it's one of those things, it's another behind the scene kind of thing that people don't get to see. I mean, it's like going into the kitchen of the restaurant, you like going to, it's like you get this. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. So, and for him, I think it was great because he got to be. Hey, some restaurants you didn't know, but like I think it was cool just for him to really give that information out and not like gatekeep or hide it, because he could have easily said, we're shutting down Ross, we're blowing it out for $69, and that's it. Could have said that, but I think him giving the why behind it. And, really showing what it costs and showing like, hey, we're not closing or blowing them out or anything just to make a quick penny. We're getting rid of them. We bought them back from all of the dealers and we're going to sell them literally at cost, like no fluff. So I thought it was great. Josh has always been one of those guys that he's so chill when it comes to that kind of stuff that he was just like, yeah, sure. Let's tell him. I don't care, which is not normal for a lot of companies. So that was refreshing.
Yeah, I loved it. And I think it's really inspiring in a sense, because I think Josh being so respected and such a voice in the industry, I think it gives other people permission to be able to speak like this as well, which is great. I love the fact that in a time in history where we are only allowed to post about our successes, a lot of time, exploiting those successes as much as we can, or posting them in such a way where it looks like a bigger success than it actually was. Like, we always have to look good. And then for Josh to come out in front of his audience of somewhere around 500,000 subscribers on YouTube and say, hey, I screwed up, or this didn't go the way I expected, or whatever the outcome may be. It was so nice to see, and not because he failed, not at all. I don't wish that on Josh in any way, but unfortunately it didn't go the way he expected. And then for him to be transparent about his take on why and what he learned from it, and what, I just thought it was great. It made me like him even more. I feel like Josh is the golden child of the music industry, and this was now he's turning into platinum. Like, he's just, I loved it, and so I thought it was really refreshing. Again, I don't wish any failure on him, JHS, or any other companies he does. I thought it was a really cool endeavor, and I loved, which I know we'll get into, I loved how he talked about the cost, because I did this similar thing, and I don't want to lead the witness here, Mason, so I'll throw back to you in a sec, but before I made anything, before I was into any type of manufacturing, I could make that pedal for $20. I could make that for $12.50. Like, look at the cost of materials. And it's just so wrong. And it's just not, it's not true, firstly, and it's very inaccurate and misleading. And so I love how he broke down the costs, where he gets things manufactured, what he considers a cost of doing business. He said that a few times in the video. This is just a cost of doing business. This is not factored into the cost of the pedal, like making the documentary. So I loved it. I thought it was great. All that to say.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that one thing that I want to get into with this is he's not the only one that's run into this problem. I think we've seen historically there have been many brands that have relaunched and have had similar fates. And I kind of I don't want to put words in your mouth here, Grant, but I kind of vaguely remember you when they did this saying that the likelihood of success in brands that, try to basically have two parallel companies at the same time, there's this very high percentage of failure. And I don't think you were saying that as like, casting a spell on them and putting pins in your voodoo doll. But I think I remember you saying something like that, paraphrasing your words. And I agree that it's really hard, and I think that it extends beyond the bounds of the music industry and the musical manufacturing industries. That it's just a hard thing to do because you're, in essence, you are leeching and taking away resources from your own brand to focus on other brands or your other brand that has products. And I would think, and again, I've never done this. I guess I shouldn't say I've never done this. I guess technically you could say the Rig Doctor is another parallel brand, but we have a totally different staff for that. And I think the only ones that I've seen that have been successful, they basically have to have their own staffing for the separate brand. And I don't know if that's something that Josh did. I don't think he said anything about that. I think my understanding is that they took the infrastructure of JHS, they would pivot for a time to go to Ross, and then they would come back to JHS. And maybe from a manufacturing standpoint, that can work. Where you've scheduled in your various runs, and that during week 24 to 30, you're going to be doing Ross pedals, and then again on week 36 to 40, you're going to be doing Ross pedals, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's almost like having your own staffing for the other company, I think allows it the opportunity to succeed. And that's not even to say that it will, but I feel like it's so hard to have to triage resources between two companies and figure out what's going to go where and how to balance it. Like, I think it kind of makes it, unless you just get lucky.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really hard to do that. And again, they're not the only ones that have done this. And I think we were mentioning before the podcast, like Jackson did this sort of relaunch thing with Full Tone. Other than, the typical incendiary commentary that you might hear from Mike Fuller, I haven't really heard anything from Full Tone as far as their products are concerned. They're not.
It's been quiet.
They're not making any noise as it relates to what it is that they make, and I think it's really hard to do it. And I think that this is like. It seems to be a common theme. I don't know if you guys have any insight or perspective on why that might be, as it relates to just businesses generally trying to kind of have two different companies within one.
I have a hot take for you.
All right, let's hear it.
From multiple
Piping
people.
hot. Piping hot.
I have seen a business coach for years because Lord knows I need it, and many other business people that I follow and really look up to. And a common thread is, one step back from this, is I think us as creative people, and this is not just business owners, just people in general, if they're following a creative pursuit, it's really romantic to get pretty good at something. And then you're like, oh, and I could also do this at the same time. And your focus is diverted. Yeah. And your focus is naturally split because it has to be. You're no longer focusing on one thing. I'm not just a guitar player. I'm a guitar player, and I also play bass sometimes. And sometimes I'll play drums, and then I'll sing. And when I hear entrepreneurs say, this business is going pretty well, and I actually had this great idea for another business I'm going to start in 2 weeks. I've got this great idea. And then I have this other third business over there and a side hustle to those businesses over there. And the first thing that comes to mind, and this would have been my thoughts with Ross as well, I don't remember saying it, but it sounds like me, is as soon as I hear people saying they're splitting their focus, I internally cringe a little bit because your chances of success have now halved. You are not, if someone asks me, are your chances going to be better putting 100% of your focus into Goodwood or 50% on Goodwood and 50% on another startup? I would take the one focus, put all my eggs in one basket, risk it all on one focused idea, than 2 or 3 and see which one takes off. Because I just feel like the writing is on the wall. And I don't think it's a romantic to have one focus. I don't think it's all that sexy necessarily, but I think your chances of success in any creative pursuit is much higher if you can discipline yourself to be focused. And not to say Josh made a bad call. I mean, he's got a proven track record with JHS. I was really hoping Ross would go well, but there are a few brands in my head now, Full Tone being one, and the owners, operators, their attention is diverted to multiple places. And I am not saying I hope they fail to prove my point, not at all. I'm just saying they are going to have to be extra conscious of the fact that they are not giving their all to one thing. And I think that I think they're starting at a handicap. If I could summarize everything,
I think that's a good. I think
Yeah.
that's a good way to kind of summarize it.
What about you, Brian?
I would say, like, in the most realist way, like, I could think about it is like, you know, yes, it's the same thing as putting, you know, you're splitting your time to doing, like, of building 2 different things. The same thing of me is like, I can put all my time into building rigs and I can crank out 2-3 boards a week, or I can do one build every week and a half and also spend the other half putting together stop motion videos and reels and content and video. Like, people, you know, it's the same thing as like, hey, why don't you have more video content of this rig you just did? I'm like, the amount of time it takes to do that one video, I could be doing 2 other boards. Like, I could finish 2 other boards. That same logic applies to pretty much anything. I mean, especially from a business standpoint, you're having to shift all your production guys, you know, they're in a rhythm, they have headphones in, and I've been to the Jackson audio shop a bunch, and their guys are at their benches and they're building their stuff. But then you get in that rhythm and maybe you complete 50 pedals, and then you have to shift that rhythm into a completely different circuit and a completely different pedal for a completely different company. So, like, yeah, I mean, I love the guys at Jackson Audio, and I don't want them to fail or anything, or the guys that relaunched Diamond pedals. Like, all these companies that have relaunched other pedals, I want them to succeed. And maybe that's why there hasn't been a lot of social media stuff for some of these companies, is because they're kind of head down, barreling through getting stuff out. I'm not sure. You know, there's so many things it could be, plus it's the end of the year sales stuff. But yeah, no, I definitely think companies, and like Mason said, and we talked about it beforehand, is like, if they're going to launch it, you know, having other people to do that stuff, to do it. I mean, if you can't, I get it. But yeah, that I would never wish failure on anyone, except the competitive sports team that my favorite team is playing. That's a different story. But what I would say, yeah, for these companies and stuff that are wanting to do, like, you know, especially if they're big enough, because then you get like companies like Behringer and them, like, who I'm sure we'll talk about, who like released, you know, that 69 pedal. They're such a big company, they can do that kind of stuff. Whereas you get a small company that's, you know, in a little warehouse and they have 8 employees. That's a whole different story. So I wish them the best.
Yeah.
I love all those companies too.
What I want to do is continue the conversation with kind of something that I think evolved out of this, where there was a gentleman who we've actually mentioned here before on the show, a YouTube person named, or I guess you should say a YouTuber by the name of John Cordy, and we had talked about him in the context of the Dumble related content that he had put out about the estate and some of the things around Dumbles being made again.
Yeah.
But he also went in and disassembled a JHS pedal, I think partially predicated on some of the information that Josh revealed in the Ross video talking about the expense of the pedal. And he was using that as sort of a jumping off point to say, well, let's look at this thing. If it only costs him however many dollars to make, because I think he gives some number or Josh gives some number in his Ross video. You know, aren't they just ripping us off? And then kind of tries to demonstrate what he believes to be an example of sort of an inexpensively made product, and you could just do this for however many dollars, and we're just being ripped off, sort of thing. But before we do that, I would like to break for a moment to talk about some sponsors that make the podcast possible. So I will turn it over to you all so that we can talk about those.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would love to talk about our first set of sponsors, which are the guys over at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas. They have a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, they carry. I mean, guitars, amps, pedals, pedal boards, power supplies, strings, cables, they have all sorts of stuff, plethora of stuff, yeah, you could say. So go visit them at guitarsanctuary.com, give Brian and them a call. You can text them. That phone number is, you can text in, chat with them, get information on any Black Friday sales that have recently passed or any New Year's sales that are going to be coming up. Check them out, guitarsanctuary.com. You will not be disappointed. And high quality gear, great employees. They even have an on-site luthier, so if you are in the area, you can have your instruments serviced. Check them out, guitarsanctuary.com in McKinney, Texas. Next are going to be our favorite friends over at Neural DSP with the Quad Cortex, the Nano Cortex, as well as their awesome plugins. And they just recently did a sale for their plugins over the past couple of weeks. So if you took advantage of that sale, I mean, you're very lucky at over 50-something% off. It was a great sale. But they just recently updated their Core OS. They're for the QC, which is really cool because it brings in a lot of new editing, like bulk editing, harmonic tremolo, some new amps, another new plugin that you can now transfer from your computer to the quad, which is super cool. So they are, with every update, they are adding more plugin capability, which is super cool. So go check them out. Use the code Chairmen for 30% off all of their plugins that are on the desktop. And you might get lucky. The next update might have that plugin available. So go check it out. If you have a Quad Cortex and you want to load the plugin, you want to use the code, make sure it's compatible before you buy it. You won't be disappointed. Their stuff is amazing. There are some new Nano updates coming for another firmware. So be ready, be in the loop, and check them out. And that's all I got. I'll throw it back to you, Mason.
Awesome. So getting back into this video that was made by John Cordy, again, just to quickly rehash, disassembles a JHS fuzz pedal that is a I forget the series that he called the Legends of Fuzz. It was a big muff, I think, circuit. And he basically kind of says, well, this thing is, got so few components and they charged all this money for it. And isn't it just, something that we could be making for $50? And, I think that without being hasty myself, my prediction is that, potentially he saw an opportunity because of this, this revelation about the pricing on some of these items that Josh talked about in the video about the raw stuff, and maybe thought that this was low-hanging fruit, like a gotcha sort of moment. And I think I'd mentioned in the Dumble videos that although I think that his Dumble video is actually, I think, a fair analysis of kind of the situation, that, personally, I thought he had been, a little uncharitable toward me and some other video content that he had made. And I think that, in this particular case, I think Josh was very fair in responding to him, but in essence made a response video sort of going not quite frame by frame, but, sort of point by point in sort of correcting, redirecting, or just clarifying any points that were made about what it takes and requires to make a pedal. And I think a lot of the places where John had sort of attacked the pedal were mostly unfounded. And I heard, Brian, when we were speaking earlier today, that I guess there is some sort of apology video that he had posted, and I presume that there were people that were unhappy with his hot take, but I wondered if it was kind of, from his perspective, kind of low-hanging fruit that made him an easy target because of this, and and thought maybe it was an opportunity to kind of dunk on Josh and this pedal and the brand without really having any understanding of the way that things work in terms of dealer margins and costs and all these expenses that every manufacturer deals with, from payroll taxes to leases to utilities to workers' compensation contributions. I mean, there's just so many things. To simplify, saying that, well, if he can sell a Ross pedal at $80 or whatever it was, and it only costs him 70 whatever to make, why aren't we getting it for that, sort of thing. And I think it was kind of a little bit of a half-baked plan to kind of go after him for that, especially given his size. But I don't know, maybe the thinking was no risk, no reward. I'm not sure. But one thing that I think was very respectable, and Brian, you mentioned this, is I guess Josh said that he would send him a new pedal because in the process of disassembly, he broke one of the switches or something like that. And so I don't know, it seems like it, again, points to Josh for just like being so cool about the whole situation and really trying to use this critique of his product as an opportunity to educate people. And I think, as far as being corrected by, somebody that could have taken a much more vindictive stance, I thought was very, totally left the door open for John to be able to kind of
totally
make nice.
Yeah.
So any thoughts or feelings on that?
I loved how, I mean, we even, and this is no secret, so I'm not sharing anything I don't think that is appropriate, but we were just talking about Mike Fuller earlier in this, who is known for
it would not have gone that way.
Exactly. And you're just seeing two very different approaches to people that disagree with your point of view. Let's put it that way. And Josh goes through, and I think everyone, Americans, North Americans, Canadians, we all need more of this, of Josh's approach to life in general, in the sense of someone disagrees with you, and Josh takes the time to listen to him and like, okay, yeah, I can see what you're saying there, but what you don't understand is A, B, and C. And this is why maybe your opinion here. And Josh was so calm about it, which I loved. And I don't want this to just be a Josh love fest, although it's probably turning into that, but he just handled it. He handled it so well. He handled it just like a classy guy. And again, he's maybe this is just the master marketer in him. If I was going to be super negative about this whole thing, he's taken someone criticizing his brand and he's made you love the brand even more because of it. And I think he's done such a great job. And I'm just to be super clear, I'm not saying that at all. I think Josh is being very genuine. And he, even while this guy was taking apart the pedal and breaking it, Josh was saying throughout this whole thing, like, oh, I can't watch this. I can't watch him take this thing apart because he's just destroying it. And it's like, well, maybe if the guy doesn't know how to take a pedal apart, maybe he shouldn't be talking on manufacturing practices and costs. Like maybe he's not the most qualified guy to speak on this topic. And again, I have nothing against him. I've watched other videos of his and really enjoyed them. But it just goes to show, and this includes myself as well, we all have this platform to speak on. It doesn't mean that we're qualified to speak on every topic. Like, I think we just have to stop and think, like, is this the guy that should be talking on this? And I think
it was definitely a stay in your lane thing.
Exactly. Like Josh's video was like, the subtext of Josh's whole video was like, your opinion actually is completely unfounded and you don't know what you're talking about. And Josh was much more polite and kind than that, by even sending him a pedal after he broke his while bashing JHS. So he's like, I'll send you a new one. And so, I'm a huge JHS fan, and even more so now, for many, many more reasons than just their pedals. And I just thought it was a comically good video, even though that was not the intent of just this guy's just kind of making himself look a little bit like a fool. And Josh just handled it really well. I really enjoyed it. It was great theater, great watching. I'll probably watch it again, and I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, I mean, I met Josh back when I worked at the Guitar Sanctuary, and I remember when Josh was coming in, they told us he was coming in, and like we're all kind of like, oh my gosh, Josh JHS, he's coming in, like thinking, because I've met other business owners before, and they're very business, very hi, nice to meet you, let's talk business. But he was just so chill when he came in, and he was just really nice, and we're like, holy crap, like he's just like a normal person. And that's the thing with a lot of these people, clients, business, a lot of these people that own businesses, you're like, wow, I forget you're a person. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, they're physically a person, but like their status of their company or someone that you've been following for years, like when it comes down to, they're just people. And I agree with Grant about it not being like this we love Josh thing, which we do. Josh is great. But it's just one of these, like, he took the time, and this is, I think, something I am learning too as a new business owner, is taking the positive and the negative of anything, of comments, of, oh, hey, this, this went wrong or this happened. And instead of like, it's like watching, it's like watching a 5-minute video and you're pausing it every 5 seconds to comment on that section, or watching the 5-minute video fully, understanding the why, the reason, and then responding. He did that. You didn't see a single comment from Josh on this guy's video every 10 seconds commenting on everything he critiqued. Josh watched the whole video, he evaluated it, and then he responded in a professional, respectful, and grown-up way. Because I think so many people nowadays are keyboard warriors, and they will say everything that they want because they don't think there'd be any repercussions. But unfortunately, the guy received a lot of backlash from his comments on it, from a lot of people that were following him and stuff. And like, I just think it was a cool approach to see that, like, hey, this is someone that like you can do business with. Like, if they are responding to you and they are nasty and like why would you want to support like someone like that? So like, you're just like, no, I'm just, life is short. One of those things, especially with everything going on in the world, a lot of people have a lot of stuff to argue about. That, like, he took the time and was just genuine about it. I think that's the big thing for me, and the big takeaway is that, like, it's like he wasn't mean. He listened to a consumer, and he gave a response, a chill response. I think that's what it comes down to. Is like, when I met Josh, he was so chill. And he was great to talk to, and I drove him to the airport, and like the whole ride I'm thinking like, oh, this is gonna be so awkward, and like we had a casual conversation, and I was like, wow, he's just really like, he's just a guy that loves gear, he loves guitar, and he loves playing, and he wants what he loves other people to love. So, hats off to him on his response, hats off to the other guy on his secondary video response, apologizing and talking about, like, I get it, not every person on the internet is not, what do you call it? Like, they don't know everything, not every person they think they do. So it was, just goes to show that if you're going to put yourself out there and comment on something, like, maybe reach out to the company or do the work or the research beforehand before you go put out a video to how many 1,000 followers or whatever he has. But yeah, that's what I would say. Is I think it was genuine. Like, I think it was a good learning experience too for a lot of people, because it's not something business owners do. So it was good on all fronts, I think.
Well, I want to continue the conversation. Before we do, I want to break one more time for some additional sponsors that make the show possible every single week. I'll turn that over to Grant.
I want to tell you guys about mono creators. Firstly, I was actually on Instagram burning 5 minutes, which turned into 10, and mono creators came up on my feed, and I was glad they did. I actually saw they recently put out a new line of cases, and the colors that they have are awesome. They've come up with some really cool soft bags. I don't know if you guys have seen these or not, but they recently posted them on their Instagram, and I don't use Gorgeous often, but this fits the bill. Beautiful soft bags. And so mono creators, if you have never heard of them before, create incredible soft bags for your electric guitar, your acoustic guitar, even your pedal board. They have a line of pedal boards and accessories, even power supplies that are super low profile and have high current outlets. Basically, if you need to finish off your pedal board, get a case for your guitar, a double gig bag, Mono Creators is the place to go. So definitely check them out before you make your next case or pedal board purchase. And I think you're going to like what you find. You can use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, to get 10% off or 90% away from free, as we like to talk about this on the podcast. I had someone call me out on Instagram the other day for a Black Friday sale that just finished, and I posted, you get 15% off. I'm like, don't you mean 85% away from free? So it was very good. It was a nice comment. Touche. So 90% away from free if you use the code Chairman at monocreators.com. I also want to tell you guys about BTPA, or Bestronics. BTPA, I don't want to say I talk to Brad more than my wife. That would be a lie, but it's getting close. Brad is so helpwork
He's your work wife, huh?
Exactly. He's one of my many work wives. I consider you guys my work wives as well. My work wife harem, that's inappropriate. Brad is up there. I chat to him all the time. Yesterday I was emailing him asking if I could get some samples on some plugs that he has, because I just want to check out what's coming through and be aware of what's going on. And within 20 minutes, he had emailed me back, and we were chatting about these samples, and they're out the door. And he's so helpful, so knowledgeable. And whether it's D-sockets, locking jacks, USB throughs, power connectors, raw cable, plugs, pedal board accessories, panel mounts, you name it, snakes, Brad will help you out and get you what you need. So check out btpa.com. And another 90% away from free, Chairs, DACHAIRS is the code. Use that on checkout and you'll save 10% on your order at btpa.com. Mason.
Yeah.
I did.
Brad's. Yeah.
I did realize they don't sell rattlesnakes and garden snakes. That's the only snakes they don't sell. You got to go to a pet store for that one.
Yep. Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. I had to. I tried. I asked, do you have pythons? He said no.
Not that type of snake handler.
Nope.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've chatted through some of the things that dealt with sort of the relaunching of Ross, the challenges of sort of running two parallel businesses, and then the expenses. I guess what I'd like to finish on is do you feel like this is likely going to inspire companies to be more transparent about the amount that their products cost? And do you think that we're likely going to see a shift in the way that it's presented? I feel like in some ways, some companies have tried to do this and maybe just didn't have the same mouthpiece that Josh had to explain it. And in fairness, Josh is uniquely gifted to deliver that information anyway. Like as we've mentioned, one of his skills beyond, his business acumen and ability to market his brand is he's a really great communicator, I think, where he doesn't seem to overpower you with fancy words, but understands how to get to the core of something really quickly and efficiently. Oh. And I kind of wonder whether this is going to be a new standard with which we see, because I feel like there's always so much confusion about pricing, and there's a lot of anger, almost palpable anger around pricing. And, as the comments that we've all heard where people say, well, I can just make that for this much lesser amount of money sort of comment. I do think it's a little bit ham-fisted, as we saw with John Cordy. It is like those people are not in the world of manufacturing, and so they really don't have anything to contextualize costs. They are not, they likely do not have a payroll that they're worried about. They probably don't have a building lease. They probably are not managing a staff of however many people. And so that's a really it's an idealistic position to stand in and have no information at all. And so I wonder whether this could, this happening on a wider scale could be helpful for customers to really understand that, like, when you're comparing Nuix or you're comparing Donner to other, let's say, American companies, there's no comparison in terms of the expenses. Like, you could say, can you have a functional overdrive pedal for the price of a Donner or a Nuix? I think the answer is absolutely yes. I think that there will certainly be some qualitative differences in those things, but I don't know if for some people that value is not there. They are treating their pedals as kind of consumable and disposable, where maybe the longevity doesn't have any bearing for them because they're like, well, I'm just going to use this for 6 months and get rid of it, or move on to something else. I don't care if it doesn't work anymore, after 5 years, or I don't care if the warranty sucks or whatever. I think that there, of course, will always be versions of this person that exist on the internet that just don't know anything and are just saying comments because they feel like they understand more about the internal parts of manufacturing. And whenever I hear those people, I say, okay, great. I'll turn over the bill of materials. You show me how I'm going to make this cheaper. You show me. Because I don't think any of them, and I've never had one person take me up on that yet. Because it just doesn't... I don't even think they don't even know what a BOM is, the abbreviation, or for bill of materials. They don't even know what that is. So if you don't even know what that is, we shouldn't even be having this conversation. Just qualifying on that alone. Because I think that most pedal companies are not ripping you off. Which is kind of like the overarching commentary that I think John was trying to make, is like, our pedal companies ripping you off. And I would venture to say, if there are any companies that would get close to that, I think it would be in the software domain, because the companies that are where it's very expensive for them, or more expensive for them to make it, are the things where every product is its own bill of materials and parts list for everything, the majority of the parts, let's say from top to bottom. If you're talking about something, and I don't mean to just continue to attack UA here, but a company like UA, their enclosures are all the same. They are painted differently. But as far as like processes are concerned, those can all be die cast 1,000 at a time, 2,000, 10,000 at a time, and they can just divert paint jobs depending on what's needed because they have the raw metal. So that's a saved expense because it's shared across every product in the line. All of the hardware on these is the same. Now, there are, I think, some differences in terms of what knobs get used for what. I think the Marshall ones look more like Marshall knobs with the coloration of the gold, but I'm looking at a few that I have back here, and they do have the same silver Marshall-y knobs. Shared part. Makes that part less expensive. Same foot switches, same toggle switches. So really when you're just substituting programming on the software chip, that to me seems like it can get more into that cash grab category. Yeah. Even though those are much higher price point pedals, they are not having to the brain of the pedal, the functional part of the pedal is programmed. It's not with discrete components. And so to me, that seems like where there could be more savings to the consumer because there is many repeatable processes. And I think that what they're banking the value on is their IP in the software design, like how they've come up with their reverb algorithms or how they've come up with their Dumble amplifier algorithms, and that's where the ongoing expense is coming from. Is that you're supplementing that as a buyer of the product.
Yeah.
I think when you're talking about these analog overdrive devices, which is primarily what Josh is making, analog distortion, fuzz, overdrive. That is. I'm not saying it's a more complicated circuit, but I'm saying that from a manufacturing process, there are more steps in there that require human hands and touch and all these different things. Whereas a lot of the digital stuff, a lot of that work is up front.
Yeah.
It's up front, and once it's established, we're programming chips, we're making sure that they get the right silk screening to be whatever product they're going to be. And it's a little bit. I think that it's a little bit more repeatable. So I'm sure that there are pieces to that because I don't do any DSP products. I'm sure there are pieces to that I'm missing equally, and maybe I'll get a critique video made about what I just said. But to me, I think that most pedal companies are sincerely trying to price the products as competitively as they can based on what it costs them. I don't think that companies will survive if they were doing something else, because they couldn't. I think that they're trying to be competitive, and I think that they're trying to put things in even with the Klon and stuff like that, when people get weird about the price on that, the Klons, if you bought them from Bill Finnegan, were never that much.
Like
they were never that expensive.
They're like $200-300.
Yeah, or maybe a little bit more. And same with the KTR. It was just that there was a scarcity that drove prices up on the used market, and that became in people's brain the price of the Klon. That was never what it cost if you bought it from him. Anyway.
Can I push back though, really quick?
Push back, please.
I am not one to stand up for big pedal, but
no more government subsidies for big pedal.
There are so many competitors in this space right now. Let's say Amp and Cap Sim for the UA example. And there are multiple ways of approaching pricing a product. Value pricing, as in what is this worth to someone? And that's where the cost of the product, so long as you're profitable, it doesn't really matter. It's like what is someone willing to pay? And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's one way of doing it. Then there's a cost model where it costs us $30 to make this pedal. We need to make cost times 4 to cover all our expenses. So we're going to charge $120. And I think my problem with this approach to the argument is UA could charge $999 for their Ruby and Dream, which is currently around what? I don't know, $500-ish.
$399.
$399.
Is it $399?
I think it's $3.
So I think the price is kind of less of a deal, and it's more about what does the market tell them, and the market is telling them
$350.
The market is telling them that they will pay $350 for this product. And I think my flip side to this argument is this is not bread, eggs, and milk. This is not something that you need to survive. Like, if you think the price is too high, don't buy it.
Don't buy it, yeah.
You know what I mean? I think people could look at what we charge for custom setups.
Yeah.
And I am no longer, although this would have been true at one point, I am no longer going to be charging $20 an hour for my work because I cannot make a profit on that. It just is impossible. Like what Mason said, with all the other expenses that come along with this.
Yeah.
And so we are, in comparison to a guy that does this as a side hustle on the weekends and does one board every month, we are expensive. But the market has told me that they are willing to pay the prices that we charge, and we are not for everybody. Some people are very happy to go to the guy that does it as a side hustle, and that serves them very well. That's great. But I just can't charge that. And I'm not saying that UA couldn't charge less. I absolutely think they could. But I also think they could probably charge more. And so all I'm saying with all of this is it's not a survivability item. If you think a product is too expensive, then speak with your dollars, and they will either have to discontinue that line or make it more affordable if enough people agree with you. Just like the Klon, the market decided the Klon was worth $6,000. That's what people are willing to pay. I would personally couldn't afford that, and secondly would never pay that much for a Klon, but some people will. And so the market has decided, based on units available, And what the amount of people that are willing to pay $6,000, that's where it is. If enough people stopped paying that, the price would start to drop. But it hasn't. It's only gone up. And so that's where I don't know if I'm communicating this in the way I'd hoped, but I think you can vote with your money, and if enough people do that, UA in this example, UA has to change their practice. They have to change their pricing approach, add more features, create more value, and keep the price the same, or keep the product the same and drop the price. That's the only way, or discontinue the line entirely. But that really is the only way forward if enough people stop buying this product that is too expensive.
And I think I agree with what you're saying. I think that what I was getting at was if we're trying to say that there are companies out there that could be charging less,
Yep.
looking at it, reducing it down to the expense to make the product relative to what the price is on the marketplace, I think that there's a higher propensity for there to be a lower price point on products like that comparatively to products like the JHS stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think that they're, as I said, wrapping the value in their intellectual property and not in the mechanical side.
Yeah.
In their name.
They're not a cheap brand on anything though, right? Like there's no product. Not. It's kind of like Apple. Like you kind of know you're not going to be paying certain price points for their products.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Brian, do you have anything on this?
No, I mean, I agree with both of you on what you were saying, especially like these things aren't essential too. So, I mean, if...
Well, none of it is. You can make that argument about any pedal.
Oh, no, for sure. No, I can understand that. Especially,
please keep buying our stuff.
No,
though.
Please keep buying it. Yeah, no, it's definitely a lot of these companies, and I think it's just a lot of time people will see a price and they'll immediately be like, oh no, I think it should be this, but then you can't even begin to think about all the R&D. I mean, you guys know the amount of time it goes into one thing. I mean, heck, I did a simple 4-cable method patch box with you, Grant, and it took us weeks to get it all figured out. And a couple like back and forth emails and that was a little box. That did nothing. Like it didn't even have power. So like seeing these pedals that are coming in and they're doing amp and cap sim and a Wi-Fi app. Like I have the Unity 6 controller from Jet Pedals.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's a cool pedal, and there's like an update. So like the amount of R&D that goes into something like that, and it has a Wi-Fi chip inside, and you can connect it to your phone, and you can do an editor through it. Like the amount of stuff, and I think I don't know how much it is. I can't remember what the price of it is. Is like I don't want to misspeak. Yeah, on the price, but like the amount of stuff that goes into that. So like there's so much programming involved, and you have to have the knowledge of the programming. So like I'm like they're not just dropping. It's not a 6-channel true bypass looper from Loop Master or someone. Like they are these triple pole double throw switches in your point to point. So like they just have so much in them. All these pedals have so much in them. So like seeing the prices, you could easily gripe and complain about it, but like there's thought behind it. And like Grant was saying, you have to make up so much of the cost because of the time and the storing and the packaging and the photos and the videos you've taken. And there's just so much back end stuff into it. So yeah, no, I definitely would say, wrapping up my section of it, of like a lot of these companies that are doing this relaunch, or like if they're a big enough company to do it, like we don't have to go into it, but like Behringer releasing a Klon clone that looks very much like the Klon, the original one, or like the 69 Vibe that they released. Like a lot of these pedals, like they have the capability to do it because they are such a big company, unlike smaller companies. So yeah, it's a whole, people can say what they want, but if you have a problem with it, just wait until there's a major sale and then buy it. I mean,
I also really liked I'm just on the Jet Pedal site, $549,
which is not a bad price.
The other question you asked, Mason, I really liked it. Other companies, do we think other companies will be inspired to be this transparent on other issues or similar things going on?
Yeah.
And my only thought there, and I know we're running out of time here, but I think some companies will try, but I think the reason that it works for Josh is I was surprised to see this video, but not surprised to see this type of video from Josh. As in, this is kind of what he does. And I think it's genuine for him to do a video like this. Whereas it might be, for me, I don't have the track record, nor do I have the voice that he does, not even close. Or do I have a track record of doing videos like this? And so if I tried to do the same thing, it would be disingenuous and probably come across quite poorly for more reason than one. But I think companies will probably try and maybe miss the mark unless it's in their track record to do this type of thing already. Not saying that companies shouldn't be more transparent. I just think Josh is placed to do a video like this. He's created this vibe about him, and I think it's great. And I think it was a well-suited video that he didn't have to do, but I'm very glad he did.
Yeah, I agree. He's uniquely positioned to be the spokesperson for this sort of video.
Oh, totally.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Well, gentlemen, it's been wonderful to see you. I'm glad that you both are back. As always, if you are enjoying this content, we would supremely appreciate any review that you're willing to write for us, but we would prefer, if at all possible, that it occur on the Apple podcast side of things, because that seems to be the place where all reviews are sort of indexed, and then from there sort of creates recommendations in the algorithm about the likelihood that somebody might like to find this podcast. And if you're liking this podcast and you are in the guitar, bass, musical gear community, and you give us a review, this is making it likely that somebody else in that same community is going to find us as well. So we appreciate you being here. Thank you, Grant and Brian, for being here. And until next week, we will see you later.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.